Here we are in the back streets of Shanghai, the birthplace of Confucianism.
And this week on the Gazebo show, we're going to be talking about philosophy.
Why don't y'all tune in to the Jimi Fritz Gorilla Billy podcast weekly called The Gazebo Show. And you can't turn down a cute face like this. Everybody like and subscribe.
And it's welcome back to the Gazebo Show for our season finale on
Philosophy.
What do we think about philosophy? How to live a good life, how to live a virtuous life, and how to be a good human being. That's what philosophy is all about.
Yeah, I think it's also how to understand things. I mean, how to understand why we think like we do, why we relate to people. I mean, there's a borderline between philosophy and psychology, I think, that is particularly interesting for a writer.
Right. Well, how we know what we know is epistemology.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I guess there's a philosophical element to epistemology, but it's not quite the same thing. It's more, philosophy is more like a code of life and how to be in the world. And I think it's remarkable, but of all the philosophies, I mean, all the philosophers, like of the turn of the century guys, the Schopenhauers and the Nietzsches and the Hegel and all these people, I think a lot of that stuff is kind of outdated now.
Yeah.
I think there were a lot of good ideas brought up at the time, and they were the first time those ideas had been explored, so they were important. They're important to the history of philosophy. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure that they're that relevant to today's philosophy. I think people like Daniel Dennett, people like Sam Harris, mm-hmm. These modern philosophers, Steven Pinker, these are the modern philosophers, and what they've done is kind of synthesized the history of philosophy and repackaged it in a more appropriate and modern contemporary form. So I think they're more important now than the old masters. Mm-hmm.
But reading the old masters also gives you insights into life and how to live it.
They do, but they also give you a lot of bad directions because they got a lot of things wrong. Mm-hmm. Freud's a good example. I mean, he was cutting edge at the time, with his psychoanalysis. The fact that you could have talk therapy at all was a new idea. And people really didn't realize that you could, didn't even think about that you could change behavior through therapy and through talking and through, talking about your dreams and your mother and your father. Mm. And he kind of so he was revolutionary at the time. But a lot of his ideas now are completely discredited. Yeah. And they haven't been adopted by modern philosophers at all.
No. You know what? One of the
subscribe to the Gazebo Show. One of the most amazing things to me is that, for me, one of the soundest philosophies of all is Stoicism. And this was invented by the Greeks in 300 BC. Think about that. 300 years. I mean, they had the golden rule, for instance, do unto others as you would have done unto you, which is, a big old Christian chestnut, which, they claim is, revolutionary philosophy, but it's not. It came from the Stoics 300 years before. And the Stoics really did figure out everything. Particularly, it was founded by Zeno in 300 BC. And then espoused by Zeno was a accolade of Socrates. Mm-hmm. So it basically comes from Socrates originally. But the Greeks, they had it down. They had everything down. And if you read a book like The Way of Life by Epictetus, mm-hmm. It's just a point-by-point manual on how to be a human being, how to live a virtuous life. Mm-hmm. And it really does lay it out in very, very simple forms. And almost everything in those books by Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus are as valid today as they were then. The only thing they got wrong was sexuality. They're a bit off on that, but everything else, I mean, it's all you need to know. If you read one philosophy book in your life, it should be the Way of Life by Epictetus.
Mm-hmm. The Chinese philosophers, or in particular the philosophies, and most are so intertwined in their society. So you have Confucianism and Taoism as being two apparently opposing philosophies, but a lot of people practice them simultaneously, depending on whether they were in the city or they were in the country. So if you were in the city, you've practiced Confucianism and a duty to country, a duty to your family, the larger community. Whereas if you were in the countryside, you had time to smell the roses and consider, the beauty of nature.
And Confucianism was that's much later. I mean, when you compare that, it's 900 years after Stoicism.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time. It's like 6th century. The 6th century was Confucianism in the heyday. I like the mystic traditions too. When I was younger, I read a lot of Zen Buddhism,
mm-hmm.
and that's pretty sound stuff. That's also been brought up today. I mean, it was picked up in the 60s by people like Alan Watts and Richard Alpert, who became Ram Dass, and then most recently Eckhart Tolle,
mm-hmm.
is basically just Zen Buddhism 101, and that's very popular now. So these ideas come around, and what's old is new, particularly in Stoicism and Zen. They just come around, and they seem to be just as relevant today as they were then. So those are the ones that I kind of think of as more valid, the things that really last, and the things that apply to our daily life now in a contemporary society.
And Marcus Aurelius, of course, took the Stoic...
Marcus Aurelius, a very interesting character.
Took it to another level.
Well, he was a contemporary of Epictetus,
mm-hmm.
so he got it from Epictetus via Zeno, via Socrates. But the interesting thing about him is he was a Roman emperor.
Yes.
I mean, how do you become a Roman emperor if you're practicing Stoicism? It makes no sense to me. I don't know how that happened.
And he went into battle, against the Goths, or whoever he was fighting up in Germany. He was, he was a general, an emperor, and a philosopher. How do you reconcile those three things?
I don't know how you reconcile, going into battle and killing foreign people in foreign lands if you're an exponent of Stoicism. So that always, to me, has been a complete anomaly. I don't know how that happened. Maybe somebody else can figure that out for us and write us a letter.
Well, I think in the time wars needed to be fought, and best you get on with them. And then you sat down in the evening and wrote some letters.
Best you get on with them.
Yeah.
Well, we got nothing else to do this afternoon. Let's invade Saxony.
Well, the Roman Empire was built on war after battle after war after war after battle. So, they needed to do that. And bring in the citizens, the Roman citizenry, into a larger beast that was... but was dependent wholly on those boundaries continually. It was like an organic thing, because people obviously didn't appreciate having the Romans stomping through their backyard claiming it was theirs.
And it's really the history of every country too, is this war, constant war, constant battle, and constant, because they lacked morality. They lacked a solid philosophy, so they thought it was okay.
Yeah.
To, if you needed something, you went into the neighboring area or the neighboring tribe or the neighboring countries, and you beat the shit out of everybody and took all their stuff or enslaved them.
Right.
That was like de rigueur for most countries in the world.
But without their conquest, would the Romans have left the legacy they left us, with viticulture?
Well, it's a bit... what about the aqueducts?
Yeah.
Well, there is the aqueduct and medicine and sanitation.
Yeah.
But apart from that, what else have they done for us? Yes, it's. I think they did lack morality. I think morality is evolved.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've evolved morality over time. And it certainly didn't come from any of the religious texts, but it came from people just thinking about their lives and thinking about what's right and wrong and thinking about how they wanted to be treated, and then have other people treat them the same way. And that's kind of evolved into our into our present day morality. I think we're more moral beings now than we've ever been.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic that the Age of Enlightenment is concurrent with the Atlantic slave trade. I mean, here we are going off about how science has taught us to not just rely on the doctrines of religious people, but to look into the background. And meanwhile, we're taking people by the thousands out of Africa, enslaving them and sending them off to a dismal life. And the same people, the Dutch, you know, these were I mean, the people of that time were gaining the Enlightenment. They were embracing it. They were writing about it.
Well, it was
but turning a blind eye to slavery.
It was a transitional period, right, from barbarism to civilization.
Yeah, but the slave trade really rose up in that time, during the Enlightenment. So in that time, this is the peak of slavery. It wasn't such a big thing before then. So it's almost like, we're enlightened. Let's go and enslave a continent.
No, I think it happened the other way around, though.
Of course it did.
I think the Enlightenment gave. But where did our moral justification for slavery come from? The Bible.
Yeah.
The Bible is full of slavery. Everybody recommends it. There are pages and pages in the Bible about how to buy and sell slaves, how to treat your slaves, how to beat them so that they can still work. And this is very, it's laid out in grotesque detail in the Bible.
Right, because it was written in the Bronze Age, and in that time, slavery was normal. De rigueur.
Of course, it was supposed to have been written by the Creator and inspired by the Creator of the universe,
right?
Who didn't even know where Australia was.
No, I had no idea where Australia was.
No, or anywhere else except for this tiny, tiny little area in the Middle East. So there's a hint right there, right?
Yeah.
It's a suspicious hint if you want to look into it.
Yeah. No, I've always thought it was strange, that Age of Reason and slavery.
Interestingly enough, Steven Pinker's new book is called The Enlightenment. And what he does is he traces the Enlightenment and all the sources and the people that were involved. And he traces back all the liberal values of today. Can be, fairness, equality, justice, all these kind of liberal values that we cherish today, unless you're, a Trump supporter. Then all those values that have changed our life for the better, changed our world for the better, and have developed our morality, came from the principles of the Enlightenment. And it's interesting because he traces everything back to that, and everything traces back to that.
Right.
So let's hear it for the Enlightenment.
Let's hear it for the Enlightenment. And the coffee and tea that fueled it.
So how to live a good life. Now, I've had people ask me this, and I've done quite a few podcasts, and one of the, they give you these little questionnaires at the end of it, and one of them is, what advice would you give somebody? And I think a good piece of general philosophical advice would be to figure out who you are, and then be who you are, and then celebrate who you are. And I think a lot of people could value from that, basic, simple premise.
Yeah.
Because everybody's trying to be something. Everybody's thinking, what should I be? How should I be? And they're looking outside of themselves and they're modeling themselves on other people. And you can't be someone else.
No.
You can't be another person. You can only be who you are. So that's your job as a human being, is to figure out who you are. And then to celebrate that and to actualize that.
Yeah. Who was it who said, be here now? Was that Ram Dass?
Yeah. He wrote a book called Be Here Now. But that's the basic tenet of Zen philosophy.
Yeah.
Be here now. Nothing else is happening. There's no future. There's no past. The only thing that matters is what's happening right now in your immediate circle. That's what you have control over. That's what you have dominion over. And that's the basic principle also of Stoicism, is that you take responsibility for your own actions. You take responsibility for what you think and feel and say and do. And you cannot take responsibility or even be concerned with what other people say and think and do, because you don't have any control over that. But you do have control over yourself. And that's, I think, the whole trick, is to gain dominion over your own being.
Hey, I'm Bob McDonald. Like and subscribe to the Gazebo Show. It's the best.
And now it's time for the mailbag.
The mailbag.
And what do we have here? Gazebo fan mail. We're getting a lot of letters and emails from all over the world, and people got questions. This is from Mr. Ronald Arthur Biggs from Stockwell, London. I've been following the Gazebo show since the very first show, and I'm a big fan. In a world riddled with drivel and filth, the Gazebo show is a welcome puff of fresh air. Nice phrase there, Ronnie.
Yeah.
Thanks for the kind thoughts, Ronnie, and best of luck with your appeal.
Cheers, Ronnie.
Another one here from Lisa Luxor from Soda Springs, Ohio. If the Gazebo show was a haircut, I'd never wear a hat. And thanks for that email, Lisa. And you can look forward to a Gazebo show beanie hat in the mail.
Yeah.
We'll be doing some merch next season.
Once we get our apparel catalogue out there, you'll be able to select not just one, but maybe 3 different kinds of hats.
There'll be a variety of expensive merch, including hats, underwear, twizzle sticks, egg cups, and such. And lastly, we have an email from Mr. Norman Nexus in Poughkeepsie, New York, who writes, my wife and I recently had twins. As the Gazebo show helped us through some difficult times, we've decided to name our twin boys Jimmy and Billy.
That is so sweet. Thank you. Well, I have a couple of letters here to read as well. This one is from Elliot Nash. Dear Sirs, I'm an avid listener of your weekly podcast, and there's a question that's been nagging me ever since episode 1. Are there any dead bodies buried under your gazebo? Yours sincerely, Elliot Nash.
Well, we don't talk about that.
No.
But I will say that there are, on occasions, sometimes you got to kill a couple of guys,
Yeah.
and then you've got to dispose of the body. So that's when you know who your friends are.
It's usually, it's usually the place where you do bury them. It's under the gazebo. There's a tip for you kids.
Your friends are the people that will help you get rid of the body.
Dear Jimmy and Billy, it's been 35 years since I last got out of bed, but when your podcast came on the telly at the Institute, I was out of there in a flash.
It's a miracle.
Yours truly, Trinana Winston Llewellyn Smythe Pating.
It's a goddamn miracle.
It's a miracle, but this is the sort of thing we hoped when we started out that we would be doing, creating miracles around the world.
We just want to spread joy and peace to all the peoples of the world.
Yeah, that's all we want to do.
That's our philosophy.
We want to spread it like peanut butter. Joy and peace. Actually, joy will be the peanut butter, peace will be the jam.
Or joy and peace will be various jams and peanut butters.
Could be. Now we're complicating things. It's no wonder there's no joy and peace in the world. It's got to be complicated like this. I think, when getting back to philosophy, obviously, there's one thing we overlooked when you were dismissing the philosophers of old.
Yes, I was.
Is that they can still sing a good tune.
And there's some good ideas in there for sure.
Yeah, and I've always associated philosophy with drinking. Mm-hmm. You think of the philosopher down at the pub having a drink and thinking about stuff. Immanuel Kant is a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
Oi.
I Digger was a boozy beggar who could drink you under the table. David Hume could outconsume Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, and Wittgenstein was a bleary swine, not half as Schloster Schlegel. There's nothing Nietzsche couldn't teach you about the raising of the wrist. Socrates himself was permanently pissed.
And
you knew I was going to do that, didn't you?
On the back of my book, Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer by Jimi Fritz, there's a quote from the Stoic philosopher Seneca, who was another seminal figure of Stoicism. And it speaks to your point about philosophers often would sit around drinking, and they'd sit around smoking hashish, and they'd sit around drinking loads of coffee, because these things stimulate the mind. At times we ought to reach even the point of intoxication, not drowning ourselves, yet succumbing to it, for it washes away troubles and stirs the mind from its very depths and heals its sorrow, just as it does certainly ills of the body. It frees the mind from bondage and makes it bolder in all that it attempts. There are times when the mind must be drawn into rejoicing and freedom, and gloomy sobriety must be banished for a while. we'll drink to that.
Yeah, definitely.
And don't forget to buy our books, by the way.
Yep.
Confessions of an Ethical Drug Dealer, The End of Everything, Ironic Black Comedy, Rave Culture. Where's your books?
Here's my book. Buy it. It's a good book.
And don't forget to check out the websites.
Yep. We've got the websites. That's all happening.
Like,
Like.
subscribe.
Half-Life.
The Gazebo
Minus
Show.
2, minus 7,
Gazebo
plus
Show.
49, motherfucker.
It's an important new thing on the internet.
on this channel?
So what advice would you give someone, philosophical advice, would you give somebody like a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old or something that was searching for meaning and truth and a life of virtue?
Get out there and see the world. Because unless you can feel it and touch it and really get a sensation of it, you can't draw your own conclusions. So no matter what you read, or no matter what you understand, or no matter what you believe, until you connect with the world in such a way as you can test your theories with humanity as a canvas, then it's all going to be for naught.
Mm-hmm. Out for naught.
See the world.
See the world, travel.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what we've both done. Because this book takes us on a journey both geographical and philosophical while sharing a half-century of adventures in buying, selling and consuming psychedelic drugs.
Yeah,
in
great.
the Stoic tradition.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a good read.
Yes. And Christmas is coming up, kids, so don't forget to buy books for your friends.
Mm. And if you have one of the original prints, that comes with a little hit of acid as well. So this is our final show. We're going to be off the air now for a few months.
Few months, we'll be on vacation in various places around the world doing PSAs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we might throw a few things up on the channel just from random spots all over the place. And stay tuned, because we'll be back with... we're thinking of guests next season.
Are we?
Aren't we? Maybe not.
No, we don't do
No,
guests.
forget guests. No.
No, they just get in the way.
Yeah, no. It's hard enough having you on the show.
Yeah, there's already one too many. So we'll be back in a few months.
Yep.
Like.
And subscribe.
And it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from me.
Okay.
Ciao.
Damn, you got fucking sweet style going on right now, bro. And I'm like, I feel that. And so I wanted to share that with other people.